Greetings, good morning, my CBAJ family. What's going on? It's such a blessing to be here with you guys and being able to share with you guys today on such a topic that's so relevant. Now, true, we're here to talk about us becoming the leaders that our youth need. I know earlier, Ben shared, and we learned so much from Ben. He spoke about relational love. He spoke about that things were caught and taught. And he would give us a little bit of Canadian and teach us. Oh yeah? Yeah, man. But really quick, let me just introduce myself. I am Allan-Matthew. I'm the team ministry coordinator at Swallowfield Chapel. The ministry is actually called Crossroad. You guys can go and check it out. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. But it's kind of just sculpture and see what we've been up to if you guys are up for that. But I've been the team ministry coordinator full-time at Swallow since last year, January. So that's little over a year, right? That's one of my passions, working with our young people. I mean, apart from photography, videography, I love football too. So if you guys are Barca fan, drop that in the chat to see me be hailed enough for that. But yeah, there's so much of my passion, but our young people is one of my passions that really tug my heartstring. Right? And so I'm also a full-time student at JTS. I'm studying theology there. So that's also a blessing. So my full-time work and me a full-time school. But I'm a full-time wife. So I struggle through those things again, but give God thanks for the purposeful challenges. So it's been, since 2020, I believe, I've been the one who has been behind the cameras shooting you guys pictures or, the videos for your conferences and so on and so forth, and do the graphics and those things for you guys. But it's such an honor to be in front of the camera this one time, just come and share with you guys about this topic that I really do, emphasizes the next generation, and really, so we can really understand, dial in, and really do what we have to in order to reach our next generation. And so the topic for CBAJ for the year, for the youth at least, is stronger together. And so the topic for this summit is, becoming the leader that your youth need. And I really do think that both of them are saying the same exact thing. Now, sure. I mean, if you're stronger together, it means that you're better when you're united. And the only strategy for that is relationship building. Not true? And if you're going to become the leader that your youth need, which is what society needs right now, the best strategy for that is relationship building. So what I try to say? I try to say that relationships, right, is the foundation that will build our ministry on, right? Relationship is the rebar that holds that ministry up. Relationship is the scaffolding that allows us to build the ministry in the first place. So what I'm saying, relationships, right, is the main pillar to every single ministry, every single church. It's the only thing that can allow us to stand, the ministry to stand tall. And I could just end it right here. I could have signed it off, sign, see, release, Stevie Wonder, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to flesh this out a little bit more. But that is going to be the emphasis for this morning. The emphasis is all about building relationship. Right? So if we can now understand who our young people are, we can understand the context that they live in, right? Then we can apply those two things to us building relationship. Then we will have what I would suggest a successful, strong youth ministry. So let's jump into the first topic, right? So the first thing is, who is this next generation? And this is a question that everyone have been struggling with. I've been asking, from high school teachers to university lecturers. You're thinking about youth pastors and youth leaders like yourself. We're thinking about government are asking, who is the next generation? And here's why they're asking this. Because by understanding who the next generation is, then you can understand the future, because they shape the future, right? And so if you can understand that and you're intentional about understanding who they are, then you have a foot in the door of the future. There's a university in New York, and they are very intentional about the students that they're welcoming to their school. It's Marist University, and they create this thing that they call the mindset list. And what the mindset list is that every semester or every year that they welcome in their freshmen, the first year students, they create this list of what they are. These things are the key principles or the key facts or points about who these students are. You get me? This is their worldview. This is what shapes their worldview. This mindset list. And so Marist University is now ranked, the top 50 schools, right, that shapes the future, that creates future, right? And they're also ranked, the second school in the region that is the most innovative schools, right? And so you can see the intentionality about figuring out who this next generation is, but you can also see the application because now they're reaping the benefits for now trying to figure out who is entering their school. And I think that's the same approach that we should be taking as we look into ministry. If you agree with me, say amen. Cool. So there's this book that I'm going to be referencing throughout this presentation. And it is, Meeting Generation Z by a guy named James Emery White. And so in the book, he suggests that this generational shift is called the rise of the nomads. And what the nomads are persons who are not affiliated to any religion whatsoever. And he's saying that this next generation shift is called the rise of the nomads, right? Which means that our young people are not affiliated to any religion whatsoever. And the funny thing about the nomads, right, is that they are the second biggest and fastest growing religion in the world today. If that's not mind blowing, I don't know what is. You get me? I said that's who our young people are becoming, right? And so the other thing too, this guy David Kimmelman and this other guy Mark Matlock wrote a book called Faith for Exiles. And in that, they're suggesting that our young people are living in exile, right? This is what they wrote. I'm going to read what they wrote. So it says, the young people are living in a pagan but spiritual, hyper-stimulating, multicultural, imperial crossroads that is the virtual home of every person with a Wi-Fi and data plan. They are living in digital Babylon. And so it is what's shaping our young people. So our young people are going online to try to find counseling, to try to find all manner of things, counseling. They're looking for answers for, sex education. They're looking for entertainment. Everything for them is online. And so what that shows us is that we need to know who our young people are. We need to know who they are. We need to know what they like. We need to know what they don't like. We need to know what motivates them, what paralyzes them. We need to know what questions they're asking, and we need to know where they look for those answers. We as youth leaders need to take this role as youth leaders extremely important, and that includes understanding who the next generation are. As a matter of fact, there's a research company by the name of Barna. They did a research and they went and they asked, pastors and church leaders, what are their views of this next generation? Let me read that list for you guys real quick, right? So it says they are selfish, they're lost, hipsters, tech savvy, flakes, gamers, entitled, foodies, self-absorbed, lazy, right? Courageous, which was the first genuinely positive word that was mentioned, right? So then you have passionate, you have sincere, hopeful, you have pressured, underparent, overparent. And as you can see, this list is filled to the brim with just negative thoughts about the next generation. But here's the irony though, this is not the first time that you see the older generation complaining about the next generation. I mean, there's accounts from way back to ancient Athens that account these sorts of complaints about the next generation, right? And so the complaints about this generation, it stems from a lack of understanding who they are. So the next generation has always been at top. It's always been a problem. And it's not that, this generation didn't come with a 101 help book and others did. It's just that we just don't know this massive shift that have taken place. We don't know who our young people are. But the next generation has always been a topic worth talking about. But guess what? The great news is that you guys are here to discuss it and so we can learn together, right? So like Marist University, I did their mindset. I'm going to try and put together my own mindset and to share with you guys. Feel free to add and subtract, or what I really want you guys to do is to create it for you guys. But after all this, I'll give you guys some homework. You guys are like, what, homework? You serious? But yeah, I'm going to give you guys some homework. Cool. But then I'm going to try and create my own mindset list. Let's just call it, CBAJ YLS mindset list 2022. Cool. Let's just call it that. And here's it. And I try my hardest to put it in order based on what I have observed. All right. So let's go from the top. So it says they are hyper aware and concerned about humanity's impact on the planet. That's one. Two, they want to make a difference. So they fear living substandard lives. They are deeply worried about the present. They multitask across 5 screens and their attention spans are shorter than ever. They are willing to be challenged more than we challenge them. They are crippled by FOMO, which you guys know is the fear of missing out. They fear disappointing people, which means they really care deeply. They have learned that the traditional way that things were done doesn't guarantee success. Entrepreneurship is in their DNA. They have anxiety. They have mistrust. Their social groups are global, right? They are eager to start working. They use social media as a research tool, which means that they do value education and knowledge, right? They communicate with symbols and images. And last but not least, is that they are less active. So that means they're frequently, obese. Sort of like myself, you see me? But I could continue, but we'll be here the whole day describing this next generation. And I don't want my time run out on me as I share these things. So as I said, feel free to write down these lists and add and subtract based on where you are and what your youth looks like. But then here's my final point about this next generation. And it's one that I really think is important. And it's why I pull it off from the rest. Is that their time is extremely valuable. It's special. And so as youth leaders, we really need to be making use of the very short time that we have with our youth. It's minimal, it's essential that we do because it's important, not true? So there's this marketing principle that suggests that you need 7 touches. That's interaction, that's connection, that is conversation before anybody can buy anything from you. And the same principle applies when we're dealing with our ministry. What I'm trying to say is that we cannot think that it's going to be an overnight process by building relationship with the next generation. We need at least 7 touches, 7 interactions, 7 conversations, 7 parts, 7 hangouts before they are willing to open up to us and receive anything that we're giving them. I'm going to paint this in context for you guys so you guys really get a picture of what I'm really saying, right? So check this out. So there's 8,760 hours in a year. Young people sleep on average 2,920 hours, right, a year, leaving them with 5,800 hours of awake time. They go to school on average 1,260 hours, leaving them with 4,540 hours. Out of that 4,540 hours, young people spend 2,767 hours on any screen whatsoever, right? Leaving them with 1,773 hours of non-accounted time for them. And that really equates to 5 hours of non-accounted time per day. You know what that means? That out of the 5 hours that they have, we have to compete with friends, we have to compete with recreational activities, we have to compete with just time that they're going to be spending on their own. In other words, we don't have time to waste. We need to value their time and take it seriously. So how then do we as youth leaders be intentional about the minimal time that we have with our youth? Let me share a story with you guys really quick. I share it all the time. I don't know why I keep sharing it. There's this young man, right? He's 20 now, I think, 20, 21. my good friend, I don't even remember him, so I really feel bad about that. But either way, so it's good youth, right? And he started going Crossroad, the teen ministry, when he was, I think, 13. So this would have been about 7 years ago, around that, right? And so when he started, he just cling on to me. So I said, all right, cool, no problem. You're mentoring. So, anything I didn't follow. I remember mom used to share with me, like when we go to church, I'm sit down. If I cross my leg, him cross my leg too, you see me? If I put my hands up, him do the same thing too, you see me? But eventually, I remember, you seeing him and in a mature way, I started proud of him. But I remember 5 years ago, I'm sleeping, right? And I get a phone call. And I pick up the phone and I answer it, and it's Josh. This is 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The man said he's at a party, right? And he need me to come and pick him up. I have 2 choices to do. 1, tell him say, yo, you get joke. Or 2, get out of the bed, go brush my teeth, freshen up my mouth, and go pick him up from the party. 1, I really felt like I really couldn't have done 1. So I pick up myself, brush my teeth, and go and pick him up at the party. And so what that does, and let me share this with you, right? So unless I was willing to leave my house at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I would have lost that opportunity for me to have that difficult conversation with this young man. I mean, that's teachable moments, and they don't happen often. So when it does come up, you need to have the opportunity to jump to it and sacrifice some comfort, because I'm in my bed sleeping, and that's just the reality of this work that we have signed up for, intentionality. Cool? But and here's the point though, it all started, right, from me valuing his minimal time and our minimal time we have with each other, for me to then use that time to build relationship, for me to pour into him, and that's the only way that he had the opportunity to even call me to say, yo, come and pick me up. And I had that opportunity to go and have those difficult conversations with him. And that now completes level 1. So clapping ourselves and reach level 2 somewhat. We're just getting to level 2, but level 1 complete. So understanding the next generation, who they are, is only level 1. Let's move to level 2. And that is now understanding the culture in which they live in. Question, have you guys ever written a message, right? And you took a passage and you blew it out of context? If it is so far out of the context, it had no connection to what the initial author had imagined when he wrote that passage. It happens to us all the time. We're youth leaders, I'm sure it happened to us. But we've learned, right? And so now in writing our messages, we're looking at the contextual, we're looking at all contexts, we're looking at historical context, at cultural context, at literary context. And all these things we do in order to fully understand what the passage is saying, so we can better interpret what it's saying, not true? So the question then is, what's the difference between the importance that we place on that and the importance that we don't place on understanding our next generation? And that's a hard one, not true? So here's why though. We don't find it important because it's not important to us. But then how can we reach our young people if we don't understand how culture is molding them, is pressuring them, is showing them a different way of life? And that's how culture works, right? What are the specific trends and patterns, the specific movements and crises within our society, within and outside of the church, that we need to pay attention to? And so this might be different for everyone in different regions. It might be here in Kingston with me, or it might be out in Mobile with Emmanuel, big up Emmanuel, wherever in the day. You see me? But the point is that it's going to be different for each and every one of us, depending on what region we're in, what country we're in. It's all different. Culture shapes our youth differently based on where we are. So you need to pay attention to these things. It's actually biblical, because we can turn to 1 Chronicles 12:32, and it says, here's where it says, from Issachar, right? Men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. There's 200 chiefs and their relatives under their command. So the Bible shows that they really do think it was important and noteworthy to mention these men who understood what Israel was going through. Right? But not only that they saw the signs of the time, right? But they knew what to do in light of the times. We need to follow suit, right? And so there's a historian by the name of Christopher Dawson, and after Second World War, he made some observation on the flow of history, right? And his case was that there's 6 identifiable ages in relation to the Christian church and the faith, and without new determination and new drives within the church would have lost that period and the people, including the next generation. And so James Emery White is now suggesting that we're in the 7th age. And within this age, let me tell you what the crisis is. So in all those 6 crises, it starts and ends with a crisis. So let me tell you what the crisis is that we're in currently, right? The crisis that we're in currently is that persons are living life, right, without any need for any higher power. Right? Let me go to that one more time because it's crazy, right? So there's an increasing number of people living lives without a need for a higher power. That's crazy. So how then does the church in our time create new determination and new drives in order so that we do not lose the next generation? And you see, what this is saying, it's not saying that atheism or any other religion in this period is at the heart of what's happening, right? It's not saying that. It is actually saying that what's at the heart of all this is functional atheism. In the same way I mentioned meeting Generation Z or meet Generation Z, it paints a picture of a spectrum. At one end, right, there's a secularism, and at the other end there's believing. He's saying that 40, 50 years ago, right, culture pulled persons towards believing. In today's time, culture pulls persons not to rejecting God, but to simply ignore who God is. What am I saying? I'm saying that in today's world, if you ask a young person any question about God, you'll be faced with answers like, it doesn't matter, or I haven't thought about it. That's madness. And that is what functional atheism is. So what this shows us is that the church, right, have lost or is losing its influence on shaping persons, and also has lost or is losing the influence on shaping the wider society. And so our cultural norm today is pulling our young people towards not identifying with God at all, simply ignoring any presence of spirituality. So the only action that we could possibly take to fix this, or to try and jump in and to do something about this, is by creating what is called the CounterCultural Church. The CounterCultural Church is a theologian by John Stewart, and he says this. Let me read it for you guys. So he says, if the church realistically accepts his standards and values as Jesus' standards and values and lived by them, it would be the alternative society that he always intended it to be. And it will be offered to the world an authentic Christian culture. So that's a loaded statement. He's saying if you and I were to live to Jesus' standards and values that includes love, compassion, forgiveness, grace, community, teaching, relationships, then we live by them, then we can create a counterculture church. That's the only way we can do this. And so here's what I believe and what I've experienced and also what I've observed, right? Here's the truth, is that relationships are at the heart of counterculture churches. That's true. And so now it brings us to level 3. So we'll level up again. So we'll move from level 1 by understanding who our young people is. Move to level 2 by understanding the culture that they live in. And move to level 3. And it's all about relationships. Here's a funny fact, right? So there's a gentleman, good guy, a very good friend of mine. I say call me one of my best friends. I don't want him head to swell no more, so I drop it there. But he was my youth leader growing up as a teenager. But he was also my best man, right? And so you see the connection, right? It's important to note that it started from him investing in the relationship when I was a teen, and it carried on throughout the years. Here's the next thing. Another guy, another friend of mine, I consider him one of my best friends as well, right? And he was a teen that I poured into and built a relationship with him. And now I can see how he is now an important player in what is happening at our church when it comes on to our young people ministries. And so we just look at all those things, and you do not take away the fact and the relationship and what relationship has brought to those situations or scenarios, right? But here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that Uncle Nigel, I'm gonna call his name, who was my best man, right? If I told you that I remembered one message that Uncle Nigel preached when I was a teenager, I'd have been lying to you. So that says that the relationship built, right, goes way beyond any message, any youth program, any small group that you could ever plan. Relationship builds goes beyond all of those things. Even if I don't remember what Uncle Nigel shared, what I do remember was the value and intentionality that he placed on building relationship with me. I'm pretty sure it could be said the same thing for the young man, Josh, that I have poured into myself, right? So let me share this with you as well. Sharing stories is a time for sharing stories, right? So here's the story. So, when I started as a team ministry coordinator, my first plan was, listen, this ministry can't look like it used to look. It has to be all focused on relationships. What better strategy to build relationships? Small groups. So we do? We make our sign up form, we push out promo, big promotion, big everything, you see me? We had over 80 young people, teenagers signing up for our small group. And it was on fire for a couple months. For only a few months it went well, right? And so for the teens, right, the small group felt forced and then ultimately just became awkward, not true. And so there was no momentum that was created. And so what was this enthusiasm for our small groups just kind of dissolved into just a few small groups going on. So we're grateful for those small groups. But a lot of the groups and a lot of the teens fell off because of that awkwardness, right? And so even though there was a program and a structure in place, right, to create close and authentic relationships, what was missing? If you guys can guess it, I'll give you 2 seconds to guess it. 1, 2, drop it in the chat if you guys have it. What was missing was warmth. Warmth was missing. So in other words, programs are just not enough. A couple years ago, my church started this program, or this journey of what we call Growing Young. And it's based off a book that Fuller Youth Institute wrote with 3 authors. And what it is, the name of the book is Growing Young, and it's 6 essential practices or strategies that help your church and the young people discover and love your church. That's what it is. And so one of the strategies is fuel warm community. So fuel a warm community. That's one of the strategies. Fuel a warm community. And here's what the research says. I'm going to read it directly because I just put it down. Let me read it for you guys, right? So it says, leaders need to stop assuming that programs alone are going to foster close relationships. Young people and adults use these words like welcoming, accepting, belonging, authentic, hospitable, and caring to describe the churches that they love. Here's another noteworthy point from the book. It says, while young people mention, group practices such as small groups, youth meeting, and retreats, when they talk about that their church are thriving, what is important about these practices is that they were created in spaces for people to be together and nurture relationships. So yes, your church is supposed to have small groups for the young people then. Yes, get small groups going. Facts, just get it going, you see me? But if you are depending on small groups or these programs in order to be a remedy or a band-aid, right, to create relationships within your church, then what you're going to create is further isolation. Small groups and program structures does not help with building relationships. Warmth, intentionality, those things are the things, and authenticity, those are the things that help us to build these relationships, right? So that's warmth relationship. And so, it is, here's this, it is the blood in the veins of any church. Warmth. The blood in the veins of any church. That's what warm relationships are. And so I'm just going to reload back just two more, right? Two more relationships that should be within our church. The second one is this, is an honest relationship. And so what people are looking for and they want is a place that they can be themselves, right? You hear it all the time. I just want to be myself. And so what this is saying, and honesty isn't acceptance of sin, right? But it's welcoming the ugly parts of who people are when they come. Welcoming the ugly parts of who people are when they come and where they walk with. And so honesty looks like being there for young people no matter what, and without judgment and criticism. And that part there rough for many of us, right? Without judgment and criticism. And let's move to the third one. The third one is intergenerational relationship. Here's what the studies have shown. It showed that churches with close intergenerational relationships show higher faith maturity and vibrance in young people. Who don't want that? I surely do. You get me? And that's where intergenerational relationship starts for. And here's why it is so important in our young people lives, right? And within groups, within our youth ministries, right? It's all about mentorship, one-on-one discipleship, vocational guidance, and shared ministry work. Before we continue, I really don't want you guys to take this out of context, right? So what I'm saying, this is not the time for you to depart wisdom. It's time for you to listen. Remember the 7 touches. After 7 touches, you can share. But let's just start off by listening. But then here's why these churches these relationships thrive, right? It only thrives if you're intentional about pairing young people and adults that have similar interests. So my family, what I'm saying is that I can truly see that you want to forge relationships within your church for your young people. From warm relationships to honest relationships to intergenerational relationships. I can see the effort. But all this falls under one umbrella, and that's meaningful relationships. You have to really mean it when you say you want to build a relationship with young people. It requires 100% effort. 100% effort, right? I mean, it requires sacrifice, it requires humility, it requires patience, it requires love, forgiveness, authenticity. It requires warmth. It requires empathy, right? And here's one of the most important ones. It requires a release of traditional approaches. Sometimes we just have to let go of how things used to be so that we can move forward with new determination and new drive so that we can reach the new generation. And so it's a lot of work for us as we shape the future, but we're stronger together. And together we can become the leaders that our youth needs. And so this paints an amazing picture of what relationships and our churches can look like. But it's only possible if we balance our highly heavenly approach, our aspiration, and keep it connected with the lived reality. And what I'm saying is that relationships are hard. And so in building them, we need to overlook offenses. We need to forgive. We need to show mercy and grace. And last, we need to allow authenticity, warmth, and honesty to drive the force of our relationship building ministries. Enough love. God bless you. And I can't wait to see and hear all the great news you guys are doing at your ministries. Peace.